That's it. And hello, everybody. This is Empowering Democracy. I'm your host, Joe Firestone. Our topic for tonight is changes following a likely Russian victory in Ukraine, part 29. And what we're going to specifically talk about today is what do we think will happen to Ukraine itself following a Russian victory, which is looking more and more likely. Specifically, it's apparent that to most observers, except for those in the United States who are in cahoots with the mass media, it seems like most other observers are willing to recognize that the vaunted Ukrainian counteroffensive has failed, nearly totally failed, made only minuscule gains on the ground in 4 months of fighting. So the Russian defenders have fought them to a standstill. The estimates of fatalities over these 4 months for the Ukrainians during their counteroffensive, roughly 83,000 soldiers. The more general estimates, as far as total fatalities for Ukrainians is concerned, is more like 400,000. And I'm being joined by Dee Pierce, the host of Around the World with Dee and Friends. How are you tonight, Dee?
I'm doing fine. How are you doing, Joe?
I'm doing pretty well, thank you.
You're welcome.
So once again, we're discussing what's going to happen to Ukraine in the event of a likely Russian victory right now, which looks even more likely because of the Ukrainian casualties estimated at 400,000 killed and 100,000 who were wounded and removed from the fighting because they were wounded fairly seriously. So all in all, the Ukrainians have lost roughly 500,000 of fighting personnel. Hi there, Steve Wolfbrand.
It's too much, and the U.S., NATO still wants to keep this going.
Yes, and of course, also Zelensky seems to want to keep it going as well. Also, today we've gotten a report. The Russian Defense Ministry is claiming that it has added 350,000 people to armed forces ready to engage, in Ukraine. So in addition to, I guess it must be 250 to 300,000 troops the Russians already have there, they've got another 350,000 coming rather shortly. So the sources I read say that the Russians are undoubtedly planning a major offensive, of their own. It's very difficult, for the Ukrainians to recruit any more people for their armed forces because it's estimated that 20 million people have left the country since the start of the war, that they're down to something like 18, 20 million people still left. And in order to continue fighting or in order to resist any sort of Russian offensive, the Ukrainians would have to recruit both fairly young men, practically boys, and old men, okay, as well. Over 50 men anyway, who are
And
not.
I had seen speculation. There was speculation out there. People are wondering why so many people are coming across the border. And one of the speculators was saying that the fact the U.S. is looking to build more of their military together. So they're saying there's just a lot of able-bodied people that are looking at all the men. And well, I should say there's a lot of women coming across too. But it's speculation because another thought people had was the fact of bringing manufacturing back here and wanting it to be non-union and low-wage work.
I think
But the
there's lots.
speculation.
Okay, I think there's lots of speculation, but I don't think the speculation applies, okay, to Ukraine, because I don't think that we are ready to intervene there, okay, with ground troops. I think the Poles are also beginning to realize that it's a very bad idea for them to intervene with troops. So the question is, who's going to supply troops for any sort of resistance to the coming Russian offensive, okay, in Ukraine? And I don't think there are ready sources. I also don't think that the collective West has the manufacturing capability to arm such people. Uh, okay, and this is even if they were able to raise a new army. I think the Ukraine is pretty much stuck with the army that it has right now.
And it
And
really doesn't have one.
right, they've lost another one. So they hardly do have an army. And of course, there are all those Russian troops that are getting ready to come in. So the speculation is that since the fall rainy season is about to start in just a couple of weeks, the speculation is the Russians will wait until the ground freezes over later in the winter. Of course, I don't know if it ever froze over last winter, but they are kind of expecting that it may freeze over here as well. Okay, I see Madeline is with us tonight. Hi, Madeline. Nice to see you here. Madeline asks, would it be NATO forces or U.S. forces? I think NATO nations are losing their enthusiasm for this war. I think certain governments among the NATO nations are about to fall. There are elections coming up. It wouldn't be at all surprising if the German government fell. Wouldn't be at all surprising if the French government fell. Of course, the Italian government, has already fallen. And if the French government and the German government were to uh, express a lack of any desire to send any further arms, to Ukraine, I'm sure that Italy would jump on that and also fail to send anything. So, it looks to me like Ukraine is a sitting duck for any new Russian offensive that is likely to take place when the ground freezes over in November or maybe December. The Russian factories have been working overtime. They've been working 24 hours a day to turn out very large quantities of new tanks, T-90s, and revamped T-72s, as well. And also producing more planes and more missiles and more of everything. The new Russian forces that will go into battle are well equipped, or will be well equipped, and any reasonable projection is that they will be going to Kharkov very, very soon. Again, as soon as the ground freezes over, and that they'll be making a move to go to Odessa, okay, as well. The objective being to capture cities and areas that predominantly are Russian speaking, okay, in Ukraine. And so I think we can expect fairly devastating offensives there, and probably an attempt will be made to replace the government, okay, of Ukraine, and to bring in a government that would be more, shall we say, acceptable to the Russians as a negotiation partner, and a negotiation partner willing to accept the Russian terms for peace. Now, what those terms will be, we don't know. I think people have the feeling that if the Russians take the Kharkov area and also, okay, the Odessa area, that they will not give those up. But once they take those are going to stay Russian. Okay. On the other hand, there are lots of indications that Putin doesn't really want to destroy the whole, okay, of the Ukrainian state. Uh, though there are other Russian leaders who are talking candidly about there being a choice for Ukraine, saying that they can either surrender to Russia and let Russia dictate those terms, or they can fight, okay, to the end, and then Russia will still dictate, okay, the terms, but there'll be 100 to 150,000 more Ukrainians killed in the process. So they're talking like that and saying those are the choices, okay, for the Ukrainian people. And so the negotiators definitely ought to give up before there's further warfare now and further killing, okay, of people on the Ukrainian side. And of course, the word is that since Ukrainians won't be able to resist, that most of the casualties will be on the Ukrainian side, probably in a ratio of 10-1 if they keep on fighting. Steve Wolfbrandt says, give Russia the Donbass and Crimea, okay, and declare peace. I don't think that's enough for Russia. I think they've already annexed both the Kherson region and the Zaporozhye region. And once they've annexed a place through a plebiscite that turned out in their favor, they're not going to give up that place. And I think the same thing is going to happen to Kharkov, okay, and Odessa as well. So I don't think the collective West is going to be able to declare peace. It's going to be on the Russian terms. And given Zelensky's attitudes and the demands he's been making all along for a peaceful settlement, these don't seem at all sensible to the Russians, and they won't go for that. They're just going to keep on fighting. I have to emphasize here that both the Russian military leaders and also some of the key political leaders supportive, okay, of Putin are for taking a more aggressive approach. only Putin has been silent about how far they will go. I think when a new offensive starts, if it's as successful as people think, okay, it's going to be, uh, I think Putin will be hard pressed to save, okay, a Ukraine nation. But I think he wants to do that because I don't think he wants any part of ruling the Western by Ukraine, which was always outside of the governance, okay, of Russia. It's one thing to say go to Odessa, okay, and go to Kharkov, because those are Russian areas. It's another thing to say, well, let's go to the western part, okay, of Ukraine and try to set up, okay, our governance there. There would be immense hostility to that, okay, on the part of the people who live there. And I don't know if Putin is really interested in that. So I think he will stop with Odessa, okay, and Kharkov. And then he will try to find a negotiating partner, okay, in Ukraine to settle with. I think there'll be some attempt, to give the Ukrainians access to the sea, probably through the port of Odessa, some sort of peace treaty that will guarantee their access to the sea so they're not completely landlocked. But of course, the port will remain in the hands of the Russians, not, okay, in their hands. In my view, the peace treaty will include a provision that Ukraine is forever to be neutral. And I think there will be provisions also for the Russians, okay, to remove the Nazi element and the rightist element, okay, from the government of the Ukraine and from the political system, okay, of the Ukraine. And there may be a lot of people that will be executed, okay, as war criminals because they are representatives of the Nazi element inside of Ukraine, okay, specifically the Banderites. And I think a lot of them have been killed on the battlefield so far, but there are still plenty of them left. And I think the Russians are going to go after them. They're not going to play around with them. Okay, so I think what will probably happen is the Banderites, if they're still in the western part, okay, of Ukraine to that extent, they will try to flee to the rest, okay, of Europe, or to find some friendly nations that might wish to take them in. I don't know for what reason anyone would agree to take them in, but there seems to be some Banderite sentiment in certain parts of the United States, like in Allenville, New York, for example. And as we recently learned, dispersed throughout Canada. So I see there's a lot of activity in the comments. So why don't we go through there as well. So Madeline says, this was also avoidable. Yeah, it was avoidable. They could have made a good peace with Russia on April 1st of 2022. It was all negotiated with Turkey, okay, as a negotiator. Okay, and then Boris Johnson came flying into Ukraine, okay, and, said to Zelensky, you won't get any help from us if you sign this particular peace treaty. So Zelensky knuckled under. It was a stupid thing to do because had he accepted the peace treaty at that point, he wouldn't have needed any help, okay, from the collective West, because the Russians and the Chinese would have probably been happy to help a neutral Ukraine. So Zelensky blew his chance, it seems to me. Yes, it was avoidable. Steve Wolfbrand said Khrushchev was Ukrainian and gave them independence out of loyalty to his homeland. This dispute has gone on for many centuries. Yes, it has. But also, Khrushchev was only half a Ukrainian. His mother was Ukrainian, but not his father. And secondly, he gave them technical independence or formal independence, but of course, they were part of the USSR at that time, and he never anticipated that. The USSR would be breaking up, and Ukraine would have true independence. I'm sure if he had anticipated that, he never would have granted them formal independence in 1954. Yes, but disputes between Kiev, and Muscovy. I mean, basically, Muscovy became the nation, of modern Russia, and Kiev, which was the first, of the Russian states, going all the way back to the 900s. Kiev was during the centuries that followed competing with the rise, of Muscovy. And the Muscovy state turned out to be the core, of modern Russia. So that's the way it went. But disputes between Kiev and Moscow have been going on for centuries, because Kiev was the capital of Russia, while Moscow was still a mud hole, if you go back in history. And Madeline said, but it would be a start. It might be a start for negotiations. Yes. But I think Ukrainians would have to give up a lot more. Steve says, these people are intermarried. It's basically a civil war. Yeah, I think that's true to some extent. Steve Wolfbrand says, yes, so avoidable. NATO lied. Yeah, NATO lied to the Russians with respect to the Minsk agreements. They certainly did. And so now the Russians don't have any trust in them, and they aren't really able to negotiate with them. And Madeline said, my mother's father was from Odessa, which, for those who don't know, was a city that was built by Catherine the Great, and her lover. Steve Wolfbrand says, RFK and even Trump would find peace, but Biden will not. Yeah, Trump would probably find peace with Russia. RFKJ would definitely find peace with Russia, but Trump would probably find peace, with Russia. The problem is both Trump and Biden now want to turn to China, in the Far East. And that is a problem. And so Madeline asked at 9:23, Canada, would Canada be a friendly place for them? I don't know. I believe, based on the word of Scott Ritter, and also knowing her background, that the Deputy Prime Minister, of Canada, specifically, her first name's escaping me now, but her last name, is Freeland. She is of Ukrainian descent, and her grandfather was a Nazi propagandist. And for many years now, she has tried to whitewash him. Okay, but Scott Ritter thinks that she herself, okay, is a Nazi, certainly sympathizer, and specifically, okay, a Banderite, a follower of Stefan Bandera, uh, of of Babi Yar fame, the perpetrator, okay, of the Babi Yar massacres. So she is, okay, the deputy prime minister, but how long she's going to remain so, I don't know, because of the recent scandal, okay, in Canada, where the parliament was celebrating a survivor of the Nazi Waffen SS that was very active, okay, in Galicia in 1944 and 1945, killing hundreds of thousands, okay, of people. This man has been living in Canada peacefully for a long time. And when he was discovered, following the celebration of him in Parliament, he refused to apologize even for his role, okay, in those days. Of course, he is 98 years old, so he probably thinks he doesn't have to apologize. Steve Wilpert said, I saw a headline about the UK putting boots on the ground. Don't know much more. Yeah, I saw a headline like that also, that Rishi Sunak was contemplating that. But I think that the British Defense Forces aren't going to want to have any part of that. You know, maybe they'd be willing to send some commandos over there to do this and that. But I don't think they'd be willing to put 100,000 British troops over there. I don't think they have the capability to do that. I don't think they could arm such a force. And the Poles seem to have pretty well decided that they don't want any part of a war with Russia. There was some contemplation that they might be willing to send 230,000 troops in there. But it doesn't look like such a force could match the force which the Russians are about to throw in there. So I don't know that it makes any sense for the Poles to do anything, and I don't expect them to do anything. I expect they're going to back off. And Madeline says, yes, exactly, Joe. I'm not saying what you're agreeing with, Madeline, but thank you for agreeing. And Madeline points out it's also a proxy war, yes, and it would no longer be a proxy war if Britain were to put some troops in, or the United States were to put some troops in, or Poland were to put troops in. Then it wouldn't be a proxy war anymore. And the whole point of it was to be a proxy war. So why would the collective West want to begin to put in troops when the United States wants to turn to the Far East and maybe is looking forward to use some military forces there? So it really doesn't make sense. It's time for the West to throw Ukraine under the bus. And I think that is what the collective West is going to do. As soon as the Russian offensive hits hard within a few months, I don't think the West is going to want any part of putting troops, okay, into to Ukraine to help, and especially when no Ukrainian army can be raised in order to do that. It'll be only the collective West troops themselves. And the collective West doesn't have the capacity to sustain a war because our factories are not producing what has to be produced in order to sustain such a war. Madeline asks, do you think there will be another bill passed to continue um, sending money to Ukraine? Yes, I do, but I don't think it's going to be much money, and I think it's going to be more to save face, okay, than anything else. But I don't think it's going to be enough. So it's still going to be part of throwing them under the bus. Madeline says that was that. It was a start, okay, in the negotiations. It might be a start, okay. If Ukraine came up with such a proposal, then maybe Putin would begin to take them seriously as a negotiating partner, someone they could settle with. But I think all the Russians are prepared to offer is continued access to the sea, and that they would want both Odessa and Kharkov for themselves, okay, and also Zaporozhye and Kherson as well. Steve Wolfbrand said, didn't the Polish rule Russia at some point as well? Yes, they ruled parts of Russia, coalition of Poland, okay, and Lithuania, okay, which at that time, okay, was the Baltic states. Okay, the Poles at the time, okay, had a wonderful cavalry that was extremely potent, and that also brought, okay, the defeat of the Turks in the battle for Vienna I believe in 1660, if I have my time periods right. They had an awesome cavalry. And I think they called them the Flying Hussars or something like that. But the Flying Wing, they were awesome. Okay, and they were able to conquer a part, okay, of Russia. Also, Sweden was able to conquer, okay, a part, okay, of Russia for quite a few years. But the Russians under Peter the Great threw them all out, and they haven't had any part of Russia since then. And of course, as you may know, the Russians and the Austrians and the Prussians essentially divvied up the state of Poland in the latter part of the 18th century, in the 1790s. And so Russia was ruling, okay, a part of Poland at that time. Steve Wolfbrand said it's complicated and not our neighborhood at all. Yeah, that's right. It wasn't our neighborhood at all. But you're right that the Poles ruled a part of Russia for some time during the 17th century, if I recall my Russian history correctly. It did take a year of Russian history at Cornell from Mark Shaftel, okay, who was, okay, a Russian emigre, okay, to the United States, okay, at that time. And he was rather dull, okay, as a lecturer, but he was very comprehensive in his course and very demanding in terms of our reading assignments for that course. I used to have basically 300 pages a week to go through in that course. It was very, very exacting. So at the time, I learned my Russian history very well. And then, of course, I also took some courses, okay, on the history of the USSR once the USSR formed as well. So I had a very good background in that as well. I once thought I might major in Russian studies, but I decided to become a behavioral scientist instead and to do comparative politics and international relations. So Steve Wolfbrand says the Vikings came down the big river, the big rivers, and were mercenaries for Constantinople. Yes, they were, but they also came down and they established their own kingdoms, okay, in Russia. Kiev and Rus was ruled by a Viking dynasty, okay, the Rurik dynasty, it was called. And yes, so the Vikings established the first of the Russian states, the capital of which was in Kiev. And they came down, of course, uh, um, um, the Don, and they came back down, okay, the Dnieper as well. I love that pronunciation. Okay, the Dnieper. The Dnieper. Hard to get that right. Uh, and we see that Brandy is here. ACAB includes ICE and Border Patrol. Hi, Brandy. I hope you're doing real well these days.
Yes,
Madeline,
hello, Brandy.
and Madeline says, we're glad you did. I guess that's in reference to the history. Steve Wolfbrand says, hi, Brandy. Yeah. So that's what I think the Russians are going to do to Ukraine. I think that's the way it's going to be cut up. I think there will still be, okay, a Ukrainian state because I don't think that Russia wants any part of the western end, okay, of Ukraine. Okay, I don't think they want to rule that. I think that Russia wants to continue its turn to the east. Okay, they're doing a lot of good business in the eastern and central parts, okay, of Asia. They're exporting lots of the raw materials. I'm sure they'll be exporting, okay, their manufacturing goods there soon, okay, as well. It fits in perfectly with the BRICS commitment. So, okay, it seems to me they've turned to the east, and to get them to turn to the west again is probably going to be very difficult. I think they'll only do it as part of the Belt and Road Initiative. I don't think they're going to run any initiatives of their own, okay, to do that, except maybe to fix the Nord Stream pipeline again, and to do the pipeline with Turkey that they've been talking about in the south. So those two things in the Belt and Road Initiative, that's what I expect them to do. I don't expect them to take on any projects in relation to the conquest of areas okay, of Western Europe, which I think they're beginning to view as becoming a back order. Steve Wolfbrand says, my ancestors were Vikings, Danish. Okay, Steve. And Steve says, most people don't know this history. Yes, it's true. Most people don't know this history. The Vikings were amazing. All of the areas that they got into and they partly settled uh, uh, all the way from Russia to England. I mean, they were, and Spain and North Africa. And the Vikings, in those years when they were powerful, they were all over the place. And of course, as you know, they got to America as well. So the Vikings were truly amazing in their time. Certainly true. Okay, so anyway, that's what I think is going to happen. I think the collective West is going to back off, okay, of Ukraine. I think the current risk of nuclear war with Russia is going to recede, provided the West actually backs off. But if there's a new Biden administration, then we'll still have to worry about the turn towards China and the risk of nuclear war coming from a miscalculation in the Far East. We'll still have that, okay, to worry about. And we'll have that to worry about with Trump too, because he wanted to turn towards China. That's why I've been saying, okay, in recent days, that a Trump Biden choice is an existential crisis for the United States. We cannot have that choice. What we need to do instead is have a broader choice, including, of course, Bobby Kennedy and Cornel West. Okay. Since Bobby Kennedy is now turning towards the possibility of running as an independent or running third party, we know that choice will still be available. We also know the choice of Cornel West is going to be available also. We have to push those other choices. It's got to be anything but the Trump, okay, or Biden, because both of them are planning aggressive moves that will put us under the nuclear gun again. We don't have time for that. We don't want to risk that. We need to turn to the climate emergency and to other very, very important issues. And we can't be spending time with this crap that denies the multipolar nature of the world. We cannot do that anymore. That is just a terrible and a stupid thing to do. And I hope we cease being stupid in the very short run. I don't know if I have a lot of hope or faith in that, but I can hope. I can always hope. I don't know if I have very much faith in that. Uh,
I see Lisa's here. Hello, Lisa.
yeah, hi, Elisa. Okay, and Madeline says, heaven forbid another Biden administration. And Brandy says, hopefully we get a miracle and neither party wins.
That would be a wonderful miracle.
That would be a wonderful miracle, but we can make it happen.
Yes.
Yes, we can make it happen, but we have to organize along those lines, pointing out to people, saying to people, it can't happen. You've got to abandon these two morally bankrupt and politically bankrupt political parties. If you don't, it will be the death of all of us. We have to get people to understand that. And Lisa says, we cannot have a Biden administration again. We'll be in World War III. Yes, we will, and we'll be in a nuclear war too. And we won't survive that. Madeline says, do you think RFK Jr. will change his position on Palestine if he runs K as an independent? I'm not sure he'll change his position if he runs K as an independent, but I have a certain amount of hope and a degree of faith that he will change his position if he gets into the presidency. Because there, a lot of advisors will be confronting him with the reality, okay, of what it's really like in Palestine and what it's really like under the right wing, okay, Israeli regimes. And if they remain in power, okay, I think he will be pressed as president to abandon what he said and to recognize that the human rights of Palestinians are very, very important, especially in a multipolar world, which, of course, he knows about. And Steve Wolfbrand says, stop the House Speaker drama. And Lisa says, hello, folks. And Brandy says, I am voting West. I'm sorry I lost the track here, but I can do it. Brandy says, I am voting West. Still don't care for Kennedy, but the more the merrier to tear down, okay, the duopoly. Yes, I think that's true, Brandy. And I think it's perfectly okay to vote for Cornel West. He's a very good candidate. I prefer Bobby Kennedy myself, but I'm here to say no Biden-Trump choice. We need other choices. Let us have a real election season where the manipulation of the mainstream is put by the website. Let us destroy the current two-party system. This is an opportunity to do it. Let us dump the corruption so the toxic money is out of politics. That is really what we need to do. The most important thing to convert Bobby Kennedy to, if he's running as an independent, is to base his campaign only on small dollar donations so he is not bought. That is the most important thing to do. So Brandy says, hi, Lisa. And Steve says, hi, Lisa. And Madeline says, hi, Lisa. And Lisa leaves a bunch of hearts, 3 hearts to be precise. Thank you, Lisa. Lisa says, we can make it happen, all in caps. We can. We need that movement. We need the movement to dump the corruption. Let all the good candidates do that, and then let them have a fair contest, persuading the voters why it should be them rather than other candidates. Brandy says, we have kids losing needed services due to Medicaid cuts at my work. That's very important. I think if we get rid of both of the plutocratic candidates, the ones taking the big money, and we change the Congress too by getting rid of the Congress and the people, 1/3 of the Senate that's been taking the big money, then we won't have trouble with the new Senate and a new Congress making Medicare safe again. Because the people in the Green Party who win and the people running as independents who win, and maybe some people from the Libertarian Party who win, depending on whether they're left libertarians or right libertarians, there will be enough new people that we will be able to get what the people want through Congress, and what the people want, we all know, is Medicare for all. There won't be a two-tier system anymore. There will be only Medicare for all, and it will be free at the point of service. Lisa says, but it's going to take some sacred cows being sacrificed, and that's the truth. Madeline says, yes, we can make it happen, Lisa. Steve Wolfbrand says, nobody will get 270 electoral votes, hence it's thrown into the House and Trump wins. That could happen, Steve. It's a possibility. I am not saying not. I'm not saying, okay, it's not a possibility. But what I'm saying is that if the Green Party gets on the ballot in many, many approaching 50 states, and if the same can happen, okay, to Bobby Kennedy in approaching 50 states, and we can get the corruption movement going, then somebody will be able to get 270 electoral votes. All we need is to destroy the electoral votes of the major parties. And if we're willing to dump the corruption and throw out the major party candidates taking the big money, then everything is possible with respect to people who are not taking the big money, getting 270 electoral votes. Brandy says, the school I work at is paid for by insurance to provide therapy for special but needs infants in preschool. And I guess that's what's being cut, Brandy, by the Republicans. And Madeline says, that we can agree upon, Joe. No Biden-Trump choice. And Madeline says, Old Home Week. Brandy says, I have issues with Kennedy over his Palestine stance. Brandy, I have issues with him over his Palestine stance too. I've condemned him on my live streams for his Palestine stance. But I still prefer him among the various candidates for the presidency that we have now. I won't explain why I prefer him tonight, but I will have a show on that, okay, in the coming days. And Madeline says, so do I, Brandy. I can't vote for him unless he changes his stance on that.
I'm a Cornel West supporter. I've always liked Cornel West.
Yes, I like Cornel West, okay, as well. But I think we have to think very carefully about the likely skills of the various candidates to manage the federal bureaucracy and to clean it out, and who is most likely to do that, and who is most likely to do the regulation we all need. And I think we have to think carefully about whether Cornel West has that particular skill set. I'm not so worried about Cornel West's ability to deal with the Congress, provided we are successful with the Dump the Corruption campaign. Because I think if we have a whole new Congress that's not controlled by the big money, that Cornel West will probably be able to lead such a Congress as president. I think both he and Bobby will be able to do that. Where I think Bobby has the advantage is, first of all, in foreign policy. I think Bobby has thought so much more about foreign policy than Cornel West. And I think that Bobby also is far better able to handle the regulatory aspects, which will be so critical in throwing the neoliberals out of the public bureaucracy.
I think Cornel West is more advanced when it comes to foreign policy.
I don't think he's more advanced with respect to.
I think so. Just the way, Kennedy isn't familiar with a lot of things, and he has to be, somebody's got to brief him and constantly brief him.
I think people have to brief him on all kinds of things, but I don't think people have to brief him about how to negotiate for peace. I think he's going to be really good in that particular situation. And I think
Actually, Cornel West is better, but to each his own.
Yes,
we all have our viewpoints.
We will have our differences on that score. But I'll be doing a show, as I say, in future days, going through exactly why I think what I think with respect to a comparison of Cornel West, and Bobby Kennedy. So Lisa says, we all do, Brandy, but we have our country going down the tubes. We can't help Palestine with these clowns in power. Kennedy will listen to the people. I believe that. Steve Wolfman says the Electoral College is really beginning to suck. Electoral College has always sucked. Lisa says it's always sucked. Yeah. And Peace Voter, Madeline, Peace Voter 2007 says, looks like we're heading in that direction already. When you split it 3 ways, Doc, but nobody wins. No. That's how Bill Clinton won in 1992. It was split 3 ways in 1992. Okay, you remember Perot? It was Perot and Bush, the elder, and Clinton. And Clinton won with low 40s, in the popular vote. If I recall correctly, may even have been in the 30s. But he didn't get anywhere near a majority of the popular vote. And yet, of course, he got a substantial majority, in the electoral vote because of the way the Electoral College actually works. So you can split, 3 ways. I was amused today on Rising. They've been having, a lot of these discussions about, if Bobby runs and Cornel continues to run, who are they going to take votes from? Are they going to take votes from the Republicans or take votes from the Democrats? I'm not so worried about who they're going to take votes from. What I'm more concerned about is whether someone else who runs can get more votes then both of the major party candidates,
See,
because
my vote is not going to either one anyway.
because with Dump the Corruption, okay, as our movement, and if we can convince Bobby Kennedy and Cornel West to run a Dump the Corruption campaign, an aggressive Dump the Corruption campaign, then both of them can get more votes than either Biden or Trump. I mean, remember that Dump the Corruption is so powerful as people take it seriously. If people take it seriously, no Democrat will win, no Republican will win, because all of them have been taking big money. So you have to look at the potential of their movement in the context of runs by Bobby and Cornel. If the Dump the Corruption movement were to work, we'd be seeing a choice between Cornel and Bobby. That would be the choice. And the question would be, which of these two would Trump or Biden be taking votes from? Because they wouldn't be getting the votes. They'd only be getting a few. Steve Wolfbrand says it's thrown to the House. That may happen, Steve. And Madeline says, Steve, we can't stay locked into this two-party desert. Madeline says, we have to take a leap and go for it. I think so. And that leap should be with Dump the Corruption. What about West's connections to the black community? RFKJ probably doesn't have that. He doesn't have that in relation to personal connections, but he has the Kennedy name and the fact that the Kennedys were closely associated with blacks during their times, in office. RFK Jr. also may have some connections still. I mean, he worked in many elections for Teddy Kennedy when he was alive. Teddy, of course, was very popular, with blacks. So I think there are some connections there, but of course, RFKJ is not going to have the connections to the black community that Cornel has, because Cornel has just been part, of the forward side of that movement, the aggressive side of that movement for so long. Now, Lisa says, the Kennedys have always been pro-minority, especially when it comes to civil rights for the black community. And Lisa's quite right about that, I think. I'll be doing a show on Menendez. No, I don't think I'll be doing a show, on Menendez, unless I can fit it in clearly with the neoliberal emphasis. Maybe, with the neoliberal, well, maybe with the Dump the Corruption emphasis, I could have a show, on Robert Menendez. I will think twice about that. My first thought on that, may not be good, but it might be very interesting to do a show on Menendez in the context of the big money that he has been taking. So yes, Madeline, I may do a show, on Robert Menendez. And Brenny says, agreed, Madeline, over his connections to the black community. Madeline says they would likely get new people to vote. Yeah, probably both of these candidates will get new people to vote. Brandy says, did you guys see the new additions to the federal watch lists? Okay, including ACAB? No, okay, I didn't. They see anti-fascist and anarchists as violent extremists. Oh, they're fucking disgusting. And West's the connections are real. They are real. It's the old mythology about Democrats. I have a Green Party challenger to bring on the show as well. Which Green Party challenger would you like to bring on the show? The reason why I asked that, Madeline, is because Shane has been in touch with me about bringing a Green Party challenger in New Jersey on my show with respect to the Menendez seat. And I have agreed to do that. So Lisa says, let's all try to remember what happened to Bernie last time. There is no reason why a third party, an independent run, can't pull off the same Super Tuesday. Yeah, I think the ties to both of the major parties are really very weak now. Even Trump, in Trump's very takeover of the Republican Party, he has weakened the ties of large segments of the population to the Republican Party. There are all of those, quite a number, of the base of the Republican Party are not MAGA people. So there is that. Lisa says that Senator Menendez is the poster child for Dump the Corruption. I don't know whether it's he or Trump, or Biden. They're all poster children for Dump the Corruption. Nancy Pelosi is a poster child for Dump the Corruption. Kevin McCarthy is a poster child for Dump the Corruption. Hakeem Jeffries is a poster child for Dump the Corruption. They're all poster children. Her name is Christine Khalil, same challenger. Yeah, I think that Shane was talking to me about her, and getting her on one of my shows, which I will be happy to do. And Madeline says, good night, all. This was a fascinating discussion. Steve Wolbrand says, Doc. We got another corrupt city council guy, John Lee, took money from the casino. You mean in Los Angeles? Okay, John Lee took money from the casino. Madeline says, he and Booker are amongst the top recipients of AIPAC and NORPAC money. Yes, I knew that. I knew that. Madeline says, I can get her on too. Okay, so that'll be fine. I would welcome that. Just, let me know when she wants to come on. And I'll be happy to put her on. I'll be pleased to put her on. I love the idea of a Green Party candidate for New Jersey. And by the way, I not only dislike Senator Menendez, but I'm not a big fan of Andy Kim's either. Because Andy Kim has been a staunch opponent of Medicare for All. He's been an enemy, of Medicare for All. He's received some good conversation, okay, on MMT. He hasn't listened, okay, to that. I don't want to see him as the successor senator from New Jersey. He's already bought. Andy Kim is already bought. I don't want Andy Kim. I'd be happy to have the Green Party win the Senate in New Jersey. But that won't happen without a dump the corruption campaign. I'm telling you, without a campaign that points up all the corruption involved in Menendez's camp, in Andy Kim's camp, in the camps of some of the other candidates, Christina Khalil doesn't have a shot. But in the context of a successful dump the corruption campaign, she would have a shot. And Lisa says, I wish we could get that, okay, on the rest of them. Yeah, so do I. So do I. But we got to be satisfied with just getting on them their contributions from wealthy people and from corporations and from corporate PACs and from super PACs. We have plenty to get on them, and we can ask people the question, do you really expect that they will vote for your interests when they're taking and getting all this big money support? We've got to put that question to them all the time. That's really important. Okay, so it's 10:16. I've been on for about an hour and 16 minutes.
Hey, Sam, we got a great discussion here tonight.
Oh, thank you. I thought we did too. Thank you, Lisa, for coming. Thank you, Madeline, for coming. Thank you, Steve, for coming. And thank you, Brandy, for coming and for contributing. This really was a fine discussion here tonight.
It's like it was nice having the gang here.
It was nice to have our old friends back. Yes.
No.
Really, really nice. I think old friends are the best friends.
I agree.
Okay, folks. I guess I'm going to say goodnight unless you added something really important here.
No, I will say good night as well. And please hit the like button, subscribe, and share. And if people watch this later on, if you could do the same, please hit the like button, subscribe, and share. And hit the notification button to make sure you don't miss a show.
And please buy us some coffees. And please go to my Patreon account. Thank you very much. Steve says, good night, fam. Yeah, good night, fam. Indeed, good night, fam. Yeah, fam was here tonight. Okay, see you tomorrow. Tomorrow I will have a Dump the Corruption show. And on Friday, I will have, a Dump the Corruption show. Thursday nights, are the neoliberal show. I can fit a lot of things into those categories. So I'll be doing that as we go forward, this week. So again, thanks for coming and good night. And thank you, Dee.
Yes, thank you. I was going to say every topic leads back to Dump the Corruption.
Well, yeah. We really need the context of that movement in 2024. We really do.
Yes, we'll say good night to.
Okay, good night.
Good night to everybody, and good night to Bonnie. Just got for a moment. Good night. And Lisa says, great discussion, Joe and Dee. And I was so happy to see you, Lisa. I was so happy to see everybody here.
Yeah, me too. It was a real happy night. So good night, everybody.
Good night.